These boats travel at 200 miles per hour on the straightaways, sometimes inches apart, and sometimes things go wrong.
And they're real bouncing it.
Oh, there goes Vilwalk. We have an accident. We have a crash.
It is in the air. Look at this. Look how close that is. For the driver, it's a test to see how far they can push their boats and themselves. Don't push hard enough and you won't win. Push too hard and face the consequences. The state of hydroplane racing in 2007 is very strong. The most competitive fleet in years. New boats, new drivers, faster speeds. So far this year, it's the story of two veteran drivers. Dave Vilwalk has the most wins of any active driver. Steve David is the National High Points Driver Champion the past 2 years. Vilwalk aboard the U16 Elstrom's Elam Plus. David driving a brand new U6 Oh Boy Oberto Miss Madison. They've battled deck to deck in every race this year. David's gotten faster every time out, but Vilwalk has won all 3 races. Will Tri-Cities be the time Steve David breaks through? It was a wild weekend in Evansville, Indiana. 3 boats flipped in 3 straight races. Rookie driver Jeff Bernard got caught in the wash from another boat. His U5 FormulaBoats.com rode the wash up in the air and went over. In the very next heat race, in the very same spot, it was Jean Theoret in the U37 Miss Beacon Plumbing. Theoret was leading the field and looked like he was on his way to victory when he blew over, a full 360.
Theoret went over! Theoret went over, lad! He's keeping the boat running! Theoret has blown over!
But in the end, it was Dave Vilwalk in the U16 taking the checkered flag and racking up the win. It was homecoming for the brand new U6 Oh Boy Oberto Miss Madison. The community of Madison, Indiana owns the boat, and it was rewarded with a brand new one this year. And the fans were not disappointed. Driver Steve David won 3 straight heats and served notice. This is one fast boat. It came down to Vilwalk and David again. At the end of the day, it was Vilwalk winning, Steve David second. In the finals in Detroit at the Gold Cup, it would happen again. The U1 FormulaBoats.com went airborne and landed upside down. And this one looked bad. 18 agonizing minutes passed before word got out that driver Mike Allen was alert and awake and being brought back to shore. In the restart, it was Steve David and Dave Vilwalk battling it out again. David again would finish second. The Elstrom Elam crew would get to celebrate a Gold Cup victory, winning 3 straight heats and their 3rd straight race. For Vilwalk, it was career win number 54. And now, unlimited hydroplane racing comes to the Tri-Cities as the Lamb Weston Columbia Cup takes center stage. These drivers will be tested. They will battle each other and the river. They will push their machines and themselves. Who will win the battle? Who will take this year's Columbia Cup trophy? Stay tuned.
move to our vantage point at the start-finish line here for the 2007 Lamb Weston Columbia Cup. Steve, we have had the most exciting, probably the most competitive racing in unlimited hydroplane history, the first 3 races of this season, and we could expect some great racing this afternoon.
We have, as you have probably heard, the largest field of the year assembled here in the Tri-Cities. It's great to see. We have new boats, new paint jobs, new drivers. Mark and I will tell you, we did this stuff for years and years and years when it was the same faces, same names, same old boats. No longer the case, and the fact that we have these new people in the sport is really adding an exciting element. We have 2 drivers we'll see racing today in their first weekend of competition. I can't say first day because they did run a couple of heats yesterday, which we will, by the way, show you in just a few minutes.
Inside the Race, a driver profile, is brought to you by Chiefs RV. U37 driver Jean Thioret is the winningest Grand Prix class driver in the history of the class, with 43 career victories, 6 national championships, and is a 4-time Grand Prix world champion. A second-generation racing prodigy, he entered the unlimited class in 2005 and won 3 of 7 races he entered, driving the U8 hydroplane. Brought to you by Chiefs RV.
To presume that there is someone in your audience today who just moved here from Nebraska, and we need to explain to them that in hydroplane racing it's all about making your way to the winner-take-all final heat, and you get there by scoring points in preliminary heats. Heat 1, 2, and 3 are divided into sections with, in our case, 4 to 5 boats in each section. Now, yesterday we ran heats 1A, 1B, and 1C. So, Mark, we have highlights of those we can run through and give the audience an idea how that went.
And we'll take a look at those right now. In Heat 1A, we had Jimmy Shane, the rookie driver, in his very first heat of racing in the U1 Formula boats. Jeff Bernard, his teammate in the U5. We also had David Bryant, the U10, J. Michael Kelly, and Steve David in the Oboy Oberto.
As the boats came down to the start, and also for you new viewers, you must not cross the start-finish line, which is right there, before that clock ticks down to 0-0. And that will become a factor in this heat, as we will show you later on. The leader coming into our first turn, with our first turn camera giving you a great shot, that is Steve David in the brand new Oboy Oberto, leading the field, Mark, as we thought he would at this point.
And we see him coming off the turn in first place. And on the inside is Jeff Bernard in the U5, formulaboats.com. But looks like maybe they were a little early at the start. As we can see here, Steve David coming up the backstretch and around the western turn, still in front in that brand new Oboy Oberto, only the 4th race for that boat right now.
Now, right at this point, we had some great racing back in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Steve David was way out ahead, racing on the water without any calls involved. You see right there, 3 boats at the end of lap 1, virtually side by side. So some great racing. Now, the yellow and blue boat on the outside right here, that's Dave Bryant in the U10 out of Las Vegas, and he would become a pretty big story later in this heat as Steve David continued to cruise to what appeared to be a victory on the water.
But David Bryant in the U10, Haas Mortgage Investors, right behind him, and actually had passed Jeff Bernard in the U5 formulaboats.com at that point. Steve David leading on the race course, but David Bryant bringing him up. Now, here's the start. If you look at the clock, we had 2 boats that got there before that clock got to 0.
At this point, the clock hits 0-0. That's David Williams making a great start in the Lake Ridge paving, as well as J. Michael Kelly in the yellow and green boat. So the 2 boats that were too early are sent to the back of the field, and this is the way the official scoring then shook out.
So we ended up with 400 points from yesterday's first heat for David Bryant in the U10. J. Michael Kelly in the Spirit of Detroit, a 300-point second-place finish. Rookie Jimmy Shane with a 3rd-place finish at 225 points. Steve David jumped the gun, but came in 4th at 169, and Jeff Bernard 5th at 127 points.
And we might mention quickly that those points are important for another reason. Toward the National High Point Championship, Steve David a contender there, so his mistake cost him more than just a heat victory.
Let's take a look at Heat 1B from yesterday afternoon. Here are the boats that will be in Heat 1B. Well, we'll start just about 5 seconds before the start, and again, very close.
That was Greg Hopp in the plain blue boat. He's driving for Fred Leland, the U100, MirageBoats.com. Greg made a very, very good start as long as you didn't worry about that pesky clock. He again had his nose just over the line too soon. So we had one gun jumper in this heat. Greg doing a great job getting through the first turn, except that his boat skipped out. We don't see it because it happened between the rooster tails. His boat bounced out in front of Dr. Ken Muscatel. Muscatel got into the rooster tail and took a real whacking. It shut the boat down, did some damage, and there you see the doctor. He had the mirrors blown off the boat. He thought he was going over, managed to keep it upright, and eventually restarted, Mark, but was not a factor in the heat.
No, he wasn't. And Dave Villwock started on the outside out in lane number 3, drove around everybody. Here's the rookie Brian Perkins in the U21 Myers Autotech, and he had a pretty good race as well because of that gun jumping. He was just a little bit behind Dave Villwock, but Villwock led the race from wire to wire and really had it all under control.
So Perkins, remember, again being a rookie, was told he had to start behind the field and stay back there in his first time out. They wanted him to stay out of trouble. It was the veterans mixing it up front that caused the problems. And here's Greg Hopp at the start. You see the 0-0s there, and he's already gone by. There comes Ken Muscatel right on time, and those two would tangle once they got down into the turn. So Greg Hopp, not a legal starter there. That put him from first to back in the field. At the time, at least, Dave Villwock, of course, would have taken the win. But we've got Dave Perkins. It's Brian Perkins, who moved from trailer boat all the way up into second place as a result of the problems and the penalty.
Without passing anybody and violating the rule they imposed on him. So Dave Villwock, 400 points in first place. Brian Perkins in second. Dr. Ken Muscatel got washed down, got restarted. He finished third, and Greg Hopp finished fourth in Heat 2B.
Because of the penalty. Now, 1C, dare we hope that there would be no gun jumpers and no penalties, Mark?
Well, let's see. It would be the first time of the day. Chris Bertram in the U9, Conover Insurance, Jimmy King in the piston-powered U3, Jean Theoret in the Beacon Plumbing, and Dave Williams in the Lake Ridge Paving, the starters in Heat 1C.
David Williams, however, would have problems with the Lake Ridge Paving. He had an electrical problem, kept him from starting the boat. We had a 3-boat start. You hear a little bit different sound in the background because we have piston power on the race course. The boat on your left is Jimmy King in the U3 with piston power running into the turn with J. Michael Kelly, but this is about as far as the U3 would take Jimmy King.
Yep, Jimmy King lost a propeller here, and just about at this point, Jean Theoret of the Beacon Plumbing comes off of that first turn in first place, and we're looking. All we see is J. Michael Kelly, and there is Jimmy King in the U3, and he has lost a propeller. It's at the bottom of the Columbia River right now. The rest of the heat, Jean Theoret pretty much had his own way. There's Chris Bertram in the U9 Conover Insurance. That was pretty much a 2-boat race after that, and they were spread out all over the race course. Jean Theoret with a very, very handy lead and a win in Heat 1C.
Chris Bertram made his driving debut right here in the Tri-Cities last year. He drove here, and Seattle has not driven since, so very happy with that second-place finish. And we should mention that with all the talk about Dave Villwock and Steve David running out front, don't forget about Jean Theoret. They've had a couple of stumbles back east with the yellow and black boat, but if it stays right side up and runs well this weekend, the French Canadian will definitely be a factor.
So 400 points yesterday afternoon for Jean Theoret, a better run Saturday than he had last year. He got docked 400 points for a violation. Chris Bertram in second place, Jimmy King finished third, and Dave Williams did not start in Heat 1C. And that's how it went yesterday afternoon.
13 race teams threw their hats into the ring in 2001.
But through Sunday afternoon, it looked like only 2 had a legitimate chance. Miss Elam Plus and Nate Brown won 2 of 3 preliminary heats, and Dave Villwock and Miss Bud was a perfect 3 for 3. But in the finals, it was Terry Troxel and Miss Zenetics 2 in lane number 3, winning the race to the first turn. And teammate Greg Hopp in Zenetics 1 ran just enough interference to stop Villwock from making a real charge that allowed an ecstatic Troxel to win his first ever hydroplane title.
It means a lot. Since I was 5 years old, I wanted to do this, and here I am, and we won. The first unlimited race, it's just amazing.
I'll take you guys out right now, and we'll just go slow and make a couple of laps. You want to hit this starting line up here as fast as you can possibly go. And if you're a split second over, you're going to get a lap penalty. If you're a split second behind, you're pretty much going to get smoked. At basically a football field a second, you can imagine what a bad start does for you if you're 2 seconds behind. Coming into this first turn right here, as soon as the skid fin gets set, You know the boat's hooked up and it's ready to go around the corner. At this point, the driver will come from the down pedal and actually reach over and hit the up pedal, which brings the wing up, gets the whole boat up out of the water. Less drag you have in the water should equate to more speed. At the halfway point, you're about up to speed, which is close to 200 miles an hour. About half track on, she'll blow over at an instant. So here's where you need to be on your toes. The entrance into turn 2. Right here, the guys are not going to be on the up pedal for that wing coming off this turn. Very windy back here. They're going to be concentrating hard on keeping the boat just above, about 3 inches above the water. You don't want it too high. You don't want it too low. Too low, you'll lose. Too high, you'll lose. Either way, it's going to be a bad deal. This is a very nice race course. Long straightaways, pretty consistent turns on both ends. You've got to be in good shape.
Well, that means thunder on the Columbia River with our vintage boats from the Hydroplane and Race Boat Museum, and we've got 4 of them. Tooling up the backstretch, we're looking right now at the 1975 Oh Boy Oberto, Steve.
And you'll notice, Scott and Christine, the level of interest here varies tremendously with the age of the viewer, because those of us who grew up watching this sport when it first came to the Pacific Northwest back in the early 50s, this is the way it sounded and looked. So these are scenes that are very dear to the boy in all of us. And seeing them on camera as we are right now, Mark, is especially fun because that's the way they looked in the old days of King 5 in Seattle in their first ever television coverage of unlimited racing.
What a beautiful shot of those boats. That is the Miss Burien, the U4 in her 1960 livery, and just ahead of her we saw the Miss Bardall and also the Miss Thriftway, the 1955 version of Miss Thriftway. We've got the Bardall and the Miss Burien in the picture now. They come through the top end of turn number 2, going to come down here and run several laps for us.
I think they have learned not to try to make a start on the clock, because they tried that a couple of days yesterday, and it was basically a little embarrassing for everybody. These are not race drivers with unlimited experience. These are guys who work on the boats in the Hydroplane and Race Boat Museum. We actually have 4 boats, Mark. Yep. We snuck another one out there.
Just listen to the sound of thunder here for a second. A great shot of our vintage unlimited hydroplanes coming right at us down toward the Blue Bridge turn on the inside. That, while we were looking at the boat in lane number 2 on the inside is the Miss Burien. It's the Miss Bardall. That is the 1962 version of the Miss Bardall, a boat that ran 4 years, won 3 national championships and 3 American Powerboat Association Gold Cups, and was driven during its entire career by Ron Musson.
You could hear them as the microphone on our first turn camera picked them up coming through there. That was a spectacular sight, getting those 4 boats side by side. We haven't seen that very often. We have seen vintage boats running, but it's generally 1 or 2 at a time. To have 4 of them come by here and make what looked like a start from the 50s or 60s was really very dramatic, Mark. And we had the Thriftway back a little bit coming up between boats. That's not something you saw back in the 60s. He was usually the guy out front. The Miss Burien that's running on the inside right now along with the Miss Bardall was kind of a perennial back marker. It ran for many, many, many years, never won a race. A lot of drivers got their start in that boat. And of course the Bardall that's out ahead, one of the great legends of all time in hydroplane racing.
Known as the Green Dragon, and as we said, won 3 national championships out of the 4 years that it ran. We did lose the Miss Thriftway, did go back to the pit area, driven by Larry Fuller. We probably ought to run through the drivers here too. The Miss Bardall that you see on the left of your screen, that is being driven by Dixon Smith, who was one of the principal architects of putting that boat back together. There is the Miss Thriftway, and Larry Fuller getting out of the cockpit as he brings it back to the pit area. We come back to the start-finish line, and we've got the Miss Burien driven by Peter Orton, Dixon Smith on the outside, and the Miss Bardall. Those are 2 original unlimited hydroplane hulls from the 1960s. They were restored from the original hull. We have some brand new replicas that have been built as well, but those 2 boats are now close to 52 or 53 years old.
If there is anyone watching who is one of those technical, no fun type of fans, and we have some of those, true that the Oberto you are seeing is not actually, well, it's a replica of the 1975 Oberto. This was the 1960 Miss Lumberville, which later became Saver's Mist. That boat played the part of Miss Madison in the movie Madison. Obviously, Obviously, it was painted up different at the time. Dane Sorensen is doing the driving today in that boat. It has been replicated, if you will. This vintage boat has been a movie star. It's got a tremendous history of racing with a number of different names and colors and sponsors, and it's great to see it out here still able to get around the race course.
These guys are running better than we saw them yesterday. They had a little bit of trouble getting up and running with everybody running, but they're doing a great job right now. Once again, looking at the Miss Bardal as they head up to the west turn. Dixon Smith, and talking to Dave Vilwalk, the driver of the Elstrom Elan Plus. He and I were taking a look at that boat when it was on display, and he said, you know, this boat looks better today than it ever did when it was racing. It was beat up, it had dings, and it had been out in the competition. Right now, if you have a chance ever to see this boat on display, it is absolutely beautiful and pristine.
Dixon Smith is a commercial airline pilot by trade and considered one of the real brainy guys in unlimited racing over the past couple decades. Longtime crewman, one of the originators of a lot of the computer systems used in the modern hydroplanes, but putting this boat together with his brother, an absolute labor of love, and as Mark said, they did a gorgeous job. There's Dane Sorensen in the boat we talked about. Running here is the old boy Oberto. That's the boat that played the part of Miss Madison in the movie, and if you remember the movie and look at the shape of that boat and the way the sponson drops on the side, that'll look very familiar from the movie.
Well, we're giving them a white flag, Steve, but you know, we did that yesterday and they ran several more laps. White flag means one more lap.
Yeah,
so
we don't
come around to get the checkered flag this time around, but
we don't need no flags. We're just out here having fun.
Just having a great time. Digging their way through the Blue Bridge turn, and that is exactly what the old shovel-nose unlimited hydroplanes had to do. They did not have the big skid fins. Earlier, when you saw Mike Allen out on the race course, he talked about digging that skid fin in, setting it up, and then carving the turn. Well, these guys don't have those skid fins. They have to slide the boat around the turns very carefully, and they lose a lot of speed that way. Great shot of our 2-liter boats.
Later today, when we show you turbine-powered unlimited racing, you'll see a big difference right here. Now, watch the boats come into the turn. They're running a little bit less than what racing speed was back in their day. In fact, they're slowing down to the point where they can pretty much carve a turn and keep it in their lane. But at speed, when racing, these boats move to the right very dramatically in the turns. So the drivers had to be very aware and leave a lot of room and know that their boat was not going to go exactly where they pointed it. It was a matter of throwing it into the turn, having it skip out to the right, and then getting it pointed down the straightaway again. Now, you'll see a lot different look when we get the turbine boats out here with the big skid fins, lighter boat, and they can pretty much stick it in lane 1 or 2 or 3 and drive it through there like an Indy car. Listen to Miss Bardal coming by. Great sound, Mark.
I think Dixon saw Peter Orton coming up in his left-hand mirror and just gunned it about 100 yards past the finish line, and he was the one who was supposedly the winner in that heat of vintage racers, and looks like they'll be heading back to the pit area.
So again, these are 3 guys who did not race unlimited hydroplanes in any era in competition. They are builders, they are restorers, they are fans, fanatics, if you will, from the Hydroplane and Raceboat Museum in Seattle. A great place to spend an afternoon down in the Kent area. You can find it online and drop by. You'll see these boats and some great others, as well as they have now restored a number of vintage unlimited hydroplanes.